Welcome to the Northern Spirit House podcast, where we are lighting a new hearth from old embers. Join me, your host, Chaise Levy, for conversations with practitioners in the realms of myth, magic, and connecting with the earth here in our mead hall at the crossroads between the church and the tavern. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Northern Spirit House podcast. Today I'm speaking with Erik Ohlsen, permaculture teacher, author, herbalist, storyteller, and practitioner of the Nordic Magical Traditions. He is the founder of Permaculture Artisans and the Permaculture Skills Center in Sebastopol, California. Since 2000, Erik has worked within the reclaiming tradition, mentored under a Swedish Galdrakarl, gathering the living traditions of ancient Norse galdr and authentic rune lore, and has spent years mentored under a globally recognized teacher of Nordic magical folk tradition called Trolldom. In our conversation today, we talk about building a magical practice that is centered on relationship, particularly relationship with the ancestors and relationships with the earth. Now, on to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love the Northern Spirit House and everything y'all are doing. So it's an honor to be here. I am standing on these lands, that we call California. My mom, so how it happened is an interesting mix of an Argentine mother, a dad with Swedish heritage, and coming together here on these lands in this West Coast. My parents were big outdoors people, so I spent a lot of my childhood outside. They were rock climbers, so they, back then parenting was a lot less sort of helicopter style, like a lot of us parents do now. So they would take me to the base of rock climbs, we boulder up, and then they would just go climb for 3 hours. And I would literally be by myself at the base of the big monolithic stones. And during that time, I learned how to connect with snake and lizard and cactus and stone and sand. And at times it felt boring, but really helped cultivate who I am. And after a pretty troubled teenagehood, I was one of those troubled kids in as a teen, very difficult kind of experience there. Somehow I emerged back to the land. Somehow I got back to trees and soil and water, was focused on earth. And instead of going to college, I went right into permaculture, practitioning and teaching and magic, looking at how we not only restore the broken aspects of earth, the polluted waters and the broken soil systems, but also how we rehydrate, remineralize, and feed our deeper relationship, the one that goes back to place, that goes back to the spirit of the land, the spirit of the earth, the spirit of a storm, remineralizing those old relationships that really, for many of us whose ancestry doesn't come from these lands, folks who aren't indigenous to these lands, the root was sort of cut. The traditions didn't carry during those diasporas. Like my Swedish relatives came in 1850, fleeing famine, fleeing war, as many refugees do around the world right now. And they landed in what we call the United States, in Michigan at that time. And the traditions didn't carry on. There was so much trauma in the next generations that got to my grandfather and to my dad. This trauma was so strong, so much like a chain, around the throat in a way that was cut. And so my journey now has been, well, what were the animistic, place-based traditions of my ancestors? And then how do we reconcile cultivating and re-enlivening those traditions in a place that our ancestors weren't from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. There's so many just live threads in what you just shared, and particularly how we happened and notating the way that we happened because all of these other things happened. all of these stories happened to land and also to people. And so thank you for telling me a greater story of your wider body, right? Your ancestral body and your land body, and how that feels so key to all of this work. The thing that's coming up in my mind is something that when our shared teacher Johannes Gordbeck was here last year, so she said sort of in an offhanded way that one of the first things that happens to our ancestors when they die is they step outside of time.
Mhm.
And this is one of the sort of first, when someone's becoming ancestralized, one of the first things that happens. The way you just storied yourself stepped me out of time. I
Mm.
just feel the access to a different relationality just in the way that you brought that story.
It's really one of the Norse mythological wisdom traditions that I find the most interesting and enlivening is the concept of the urlag,
Mm.
which is the kind of the thread of fates that we're the web of fates that we all have our web that is emerging, that's like the life we're living. And this idea that I mean, it's actually mind-blowing, the idea that all of these things that have happened in our past, my parents' past, their ancestors, stuff that has happened to the world, economic, political, social, physical things that have happened on the earth, all of these make up this story of each one of us. And that all those decisions that other people made and that I make and that people around me make all lead us to now. And so if you could grasp the orlog, you can thread the orlog yourself. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the power of magic, because now we can do things now that instigate a pattern that unfolds out into the future ahead of us, that affects our children, our grandchildren, 7 generations in the future, and everybody around them and
Mm-hmm.
the planet around. So if we intentionally see ourselves in these webs what we put into the web is it is out of time, right? Because it could pulsate 100 generations into the future. We wouldn't know right now, but that's how powerful that is. And the decisions that we make right now can ripple that strongly across the web, because those decisions that our ancestors made make us who we are now,
Mm-hmm.
got us to this point, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of myself constantly as, in one hand, I've got the ancestors that go back as far as time. And in the other hand, I've got the descendants
Mm-hmm.
that go into the future as far as time. And then there is no time, because we're like in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it really says, it speaks to another passion of mine, which is saving seeds. Because saving seeds is this sort of ancestral act that speaks almost more than anything else, more powerfully to this idea of holding hands with the ancestors and the descendants, because we got those seeds because of
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors. Like because of choices they made in harmony with earth and the spirits of the land, we got to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Those seeds came to us, those plants came to us. Now we get to choose now. Are we going to pass these on to the future? Or are we going to let it end here?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just this magical dance of being in community with the ancestors and descendants.
Mm. Yeah. And the way that when you view it that way and you have this outside of time perspective, or it's not even a perspective, it's an embodied experience of timelessness
Yeah.
from the way you're describing it. It breaks down this, what I have struggled with, and I know some people who have struggled with it as well, that like this idea that the ancestors are stuck. They're just a thing. They're an object that once existed, and and they're not doing anything now. And my grandfather that I never met, Ron Champagne, who I talked to for the first time only about a year before he passed away, I can sit in the story of like, we never got to meet. I never got to know him. We had a handful of conversations in my life, and that's it. And when I'm in that story, it's really painful. And it doesn't take away all the grief, but when I'm sitting in this kind of embodied experience that you're describing, um, I can open up to the possibility that there's an animacy to him as an ancestor as well, and there's a possibility of relationship that looks different than a relationship with a spirit and a body like me and you,
Mm,
but
mm,
or me and my wife or me and my kids, but
mm,
there's also a relational possibility between me and this person that I can get to know him. you
mm,
know we
mm,
can we can develop some sense of intimacy, that
mm,
what we do now may in fact cause things in the past that make now possible. Like
mm,
the possibility of um, me taking that healing action of developing a relationship with my grandfather actually goes into the past and does something.
mhm.
And um,
Well,
it can,
let's take
yeah.
that to the practitioner view, because from the practitioner view, we can and we do that, and we need to do that to fuel our magic power,
Mhm,
is to be able to think about the places, some people might call it a soul part that got caught, or some folks might say, it's a knot in the web of our life or something. Is there a thing back in our lives, or maybe the lives of an ancestor, something terrible,
mhm,
a trauma that's been passed on? And this is an important time for us to think about how trauma is passed on, because a lot of things happening in the world right now, if you understand just a little bit of history, you don't even need to know that much history, but you just understand a little bit of history, almost every global conflict right now is still a conflict that was seeded hundreds or even thousands of years ago. So
mhm,
these are traumas that never really had a chance to be healed from a collective community level or global level or psychological level, or at all these places. And so when we think about how to change the past, we get to do that by venturing into these trauma points, because these are the things that are still alive in our bodies, right?
mhm,
Certain tics that we have, or nervous system issues that we may have, we're born with it. You have young children, so you probably are as close to seeing that these little babies have certain things that trigger them, where it triggers this one but it doesn't trigger that one. What's up with that? They're their own spirits coming in, and they're bringing their own ancestral traumas and stuff with them. And so when we think about this conversation that a lot of folks have these days, like, it stops here, like with my generation, no more, I'm not passing this trauma on. And we can literally do that. Are we going to not pass on any trauma? No, of course not. It's too much, it's big. So I want to show you this knife here. I'm
mhm,
fortunate enough to have had this passed down to me. This is a family heirloom. This is a gaucho knife from Argentina.
mhm,
Um, and it's it has initials on it here, Leopold Renault,
mhm,
who was my great 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 grandfather.
mhm,
So over 100 years ago, three generations, right? Four generations back. And so how do I get to know Leopold Renault? How do I
mhm,
get to understand who he was and the decisions he made? And so you do the scholarly thing. Let me think about, what was Argentina like at that time, and who had gaucho knives and what were they doing with it? And so one day, this is the practitioner side. One day I was like, I need to learn how to carry this knife on, because I know that these people carry this is the everyday tool. It's a magical tool, but more than that, you don't live without this. This is the
mhm,
tool you use to cut your leather for your horse stuff. You cook your food with it, you chop wood with it, you fight with it, you die with it, right? That's the power of these knives.
mhm,
So I learned that you take the way you wear these knives, because the clip is right here, you actually put them in near your testicles. You
mhm,
actually you actually slide the sheath in right at your crotch, and that's how they're carried.
mhm,
So earlier this year, I spent like a whole week walking around with this thing, down, like hooked in right at my crotch, just like the ancestors would.
Mm,
And then using it for mundane purposes, using it for magical purposes, taking it out, into nature and doing ceremony with it. And there was something about that experience, like reliving, reactivating that.
mm,
It gave me a almost hard to put into words, but I the connection I felt with Leopoldo
mm,
was stronger than ever before, than
mhm,
ever before. And it
mhm,
was like he was whispering into my ear, yes, 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 yes. And then you do it this way. And then, oh, yes, I used it like this too, and I start whittling something and I start getting a sense of, oh, the knife, the movement of the knife. You put pressure here and it does this, and you put pressure there and it does that. And these little movements that were probably secondhand for that entire generation. And who knows how many generations before that. So I have the benefit of having the family heirloom, but for all of us listening, what one way that we can build this relationship in a practical sense is to get to understand a little bit of their story, a little bit of a hobby or something they did, a profession, and then just recreate that in your own life. And I know you wanted to talk, we were talking about, we wanted to get into land spirits, and now we're in ancestors, which is lovely. But just to help us segue, I wanted to mention that I think this is the greatest way to develop magical power is through relationship tending.
mhm,
And relationship tending isn't a one-off.
mhm,
It's actually doing the thing over and over and over and over again until there's a connection that's built.
mhm. Yeah. Yes. And yeah, the again, you're bringing the embodied, right? This motion you did of being linked to the ancestors and the descendants, the embodiment of that, and what you're pulling out about the um the magic of you getting to know the materiality of a thing, of a tool, of a knife, how it speaks to you of how it will be used, right? And then how the from a practitioner perspective, how the ancestors speak to you as well in that moment. We went to Edinburgh in 2019, and I got a skein do, which is like the everyday conceal carry Scottish knife,
Yeah.
and the same thing of like that knife. I don't have it with me, but it's these short little red deer antler pointy knives, and one side is very thick and the other side is razor thin, and learning how to be with that knife and how it's different than my Sami knife or my like huge bushwhacking knife, that they do different things, and what that teaches you about how a knife is used, both magically, you know because a skein do is a concealed knife. It's a knife that, like, no one knows you've got, and at the last moment you're gonna whip it out and you're gonna do what you need to do with it. It doesn't make a statement until you're ready. And um, yeah, what material teaches us really got to magic through the material process of learning how to be a person on the landscape. So
Mhm.
tracking animals and learning bird language and learning how to make fire by friction and
Mm.
carve and make clay pots and do these, like, the skills um, was the thing that led me into the, like, oh, now I want to understand culture because I
Mm.
understand the skill. Oh, and now I understand. I have some kindergarten level understanding of culture, and there's this and now I want to understand story because that
Mm.
carries culture. And now I have some preschool understanding of being a storyteller, and I'm realizing that um, the difference between a storyteller, and a witch is pretty much nothing. And so now I need to understand some of this magic, and now I have a 3-month-old understanding of magic, and it leads you right back to the material, everyday
Mm.
life skills,
Mhm.
particularly in these paths that you and I tread together. Um, that aren't like big aristocratic ceremonial processes of magic, where you gotta get the grimoire, and you gotta summon all the hierarchies of hell, and you gotta do all this stuff, which is dope. But these kinds of processes that are the goucho knife that you carry every day, that also has the magic, it's alive, and all of that is relationship building. And I think that is the core of waking up to animacy and animism. Like you're saying, like building a relationship with an object, quote unquote. You just keep opening doors and realizing it's not really an object at all. It's a partner. It's a partner.
Yeah.
In the same way that my ancestor Ron, who has passed, if as I build that relationship, there's animacy there, and there's the nudge there, and there's the like whisper in the ear there. But that only comes through doing the hard work of building relationship, which I think as people who are dedicated to relationship with the land, I imagine that process is core to the learning of how to do that in magic, quote unquote.
It is for me, the process of building relationship is that's the work, and then outcomes come from the kinds of relationships that we build and we tend. And just like we're talking about, objects like a knife, which has life, and we feed it life, and it carries its own life. But the same with a tree, even more so. The same with a creek, a waterfall, a stone. The same even with just a handful of soil, and really the same with you. You are Rob. It's like you're Chaise, but you're also Rob. You're also your mother. You're also your children. You are all of them, because there's a bit of you in all of them, and there's a little bit of them in you. And so, like, one way that I like to honor ancestors is to just pour offerings from one hand into the other hand, making an offering to my ancestors, because there is nothing more ancestral than your body. Like, just think about that for a minute, right? There's like nothing more ancestral than your body. But then when we go a bit deeper, we realize that our bodies are the earth too. And when we understand that our breath is the atmosphere, it is the earth, right? It is the wind spirits. And we start to immerse ourselves and place ourselves in the ecosystem, whether it's in the seen forces of the ecosystem or the unseen powers of the ecosystem, we're there. And so one of the problems with Western culture in this timeline, this era, is that we refuse to listen to those connections and the information and the voice, the messages and stuff that want to come. We don't listen. And so how can you build a relationship if you're not willing to listen? You can't make a connection without being open to it and allowing a message to be heard. And so just like how I approach land restoration, regeneration, say of a depleted watershed or an overgrazed grassland or a burnt down forest, we don't walk in with solutions. Just like if you want to build a relationship with a land spirit, you don't walk in with demands. You don't walk in saying, here's how it's going to be. I mean, some magical practitioners will do that, and they may have some kinds of successes, but ultimately it's not a recipe for like a thriving relationship when you're overly demanding. And so the land, both the unseen forces and seen forces, respond to an open dialogue, a way of listening, and like your foundation to land tending, tracking, and bird language and ancestral skill building. All of those are forms of listening, right? That's essentially what it is. And So the same way that I would walk into a burnt down forest and think about restoration, the first thing I do, I don't have any solutions whatsoever. I just walk, I just listen, and I grieve. If there's a cause for grieving, I allow the grief to come. If there's a cause for joy, I allow the joy to come. And we may not even know, it may be certain lands, spirits that are trying to, evoke us in some way. And then when you open that space, it's like you create a container, or, like Johannes would say, a mind room. That's just a metaphor for creating a space that you haven't totally dominated with what you think it should be. You open the space, and then you allow the spirits to enter, and then you listen.
Mm-hmm.
And that is truly profound process. It's a process that not only builds a relationship with the spirit of the land, but it's one that changes you, because you get wisdom or inspiration or a passion or something, and it changes them because they get to have the relationship now too. And now it becomes, we get to do this together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that entangle, you slowly become entangled, you know. And yeah, I've been just having these experiences, over the years of like, I'm gonna go to this same spot in Annandale, under this ash tree every day for a whole year, and I'm gonna see what happens there. And that first time I did that was before this sort of magical awareness turned on. It was very much about, okay, what material, real, quote unquote, beings are here. So what do the California towhees do throughout the year? And what does this deer family do throughout the year? And where is the Buick's friend? And what do they do? Where is their nest going to be this year? Is there Cooper's Hawks here or no? Uh, is there anyone but acorn woodpeckers in Annandale? I'm not sure, and asking these sorts of material questions, but then over that year, realizing that my entanglement with that place was becoming more and more intense, where I could be at the Whole Foods on Yulupa where I was working at the time, and I knew what was happening in Annandale.
Yep.
Because of my awareness of that place had, the pattern language I was running in was, just deepening and deepening and deepening. And I could have a very good sense of like, oh, this is the acorn woodpeckers are probably doing this thing right now. And like, oh, that deer is probably sleeping in that spot that it always sleeps in right now. And how that starts to happen with land spirits too. There was this labyrinth on the creek, near Casa Grande, and this entanglement with this spirit of like, oh, now this spirit wants me to come here every day, like they got, and then that like they're asking me for particularly really weird things, like, okay, now I have to go procure this strange particular piece of chocolate and bring it. And that, you start to like have these relationships, and the most incredible learning of that time that I would want to share, one of them is that spirits aren't always there. They have their whole lives that they're running, and like that not coming in. Like one of the moments that I really learned of demand was my demand that being be there every time I show up. Because they're the spirit of the place, and this is where they live. and being like, oh, actually they're not here today. And it's not because I'm doing anything wrong. It's not because they don't like me. It's because actually these beings have so much more agency than my small little mind, that my preschool level magic mind can understand. And just and being with that sort of sense, that was mind blowing.
Wow.
And it actually like opened up to relationships with several other things that were around that I had totally been ignoring because I had become so entangled with this like back and forth with this one being.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. And it's because you were dedicated to going back and that you were building enough of a relationship that you had the ability to sense when it wasn't there, when it was there, when it wasn't there, and then to be able to have this experience that you had. And this is what I mean by relationship is we have to create these ruts of connection, these pathways that we're constantly walking and tending, whether it's physical walking or it's astral walking, but that we build an entire web of relationships through our activity and where we dedicate our place. And then they do change. I just had an experience similar to this, but more in an astral world where there was a spirit that I've been working with for a long time. And I went to our normal place. No, not there. Not there. But the space was still, there was an echo of that energy there. And it was like, it wasn't like I'm gone forever, but and so what I made an offering I made an offering. So like when you come back, you'll find this it's kind of like leaving a little flower bundle for your wife when she's gone and she comes home and, oh, there's flowers for me or whatever it might be. It's kind of like that. It's like, oh, I'm going to leave something for this spirit. And when they come back, they'll know I was there and I thought about them. And it's the same way you would treat a friend or a loved one, and if we just take that approach that when we tend these relationships, it's like tending loving human relationships in the same way, and we don't make it too big of a deal. Like, oh my God, you're not there, or you are there. Just that approach is really quite effective. One thing that does start to happen as you start to develop relationships with a particular spirit is that they do start, sometimes they do want that thing from you. Like the way that you're tracking what time of day the deer is sleeping in that one spot, you're at work, but what all the things that are happening in that section of Annadel because you took the time to observe and connect and entangle. Well, sometimes what will happen is the spirits pick up on our pattern and rhythm. And I had this happen here in the Laguna de Santa Rosa when I was writing my book, The Regenerative Landscaper. It's like 4 years of writing this book. And one of the places that I went to write was under this 250-year-old oak tree out here in the Laguna. And usually because of my schedule of like work and kids and family and all of that, it was almost always the same time of day that I took that hike. And the tree was always at the end. It was like a loop. And the tree is always at the bend in the loop. It's like I went all the way out there, I got to the tree, and then I'm returning back. So I have time to think about kind of what I'm writing and such. And then I would get to that tree and I would do my writing under that tree. And I did this 4 days a week for 2 to 3 years. And that tree asked me for song. It asked me for a taste of like this herbal drink that I drink. Usually I would get there and I would drink this thing and then I would write. I had my pattern and it was so tuned in. And it was like, I want a little bit of that every time you come and you bring some of that and all this. And so I started building this relationship. And then one day something so interesting happened. I had gone out and this is where I feel when we cultivate this openness to hearing spirits and be in a relationship to them, if we decide to keep the aperture open, even when we're not around them, it's like they can still communicate to us, even if I'm not standing at the tree. That tree can still talk to me, right? And in fact, this is 1000% scientifically proven. Check out the book Primary Perception, where this lie detection technician, analyst, started hooking plants up to polygraphs and building and tracking their activities and discovering that even 1,000 miles away, the connection was still happening with people. Like it already scientifically proven, right? Not that we need to prove it all with science, but I do find it really interesting for people who are skeptical about these sorts of things that this has already been proven kind of without a shadow of a doubt. And so the real quick story is, after a couple of years of working with this tree and writing and going out there and working with the spirit of that being, one day I came home, I was in the shower, and I'm sitting there taking the shower, and all of a sudden the tree pops in and the spirit's there. And I'm like, oh, hey, oh, cool. What's going on? And said, hey, there's a tick on you. Check the tick. Huh? And I reached back, and there was a tick biting me, like right on my butt where I couldn't see it. And I pulled it off, and oh my gosh, there it was. And wow, wow, wow. Those are those, like, I get the chills even sharing that story. Like, those are those moments where you understand what's possible when you cultivate these types of relationships.
Wow. And I love that it was mundane. It wasn't like, the, like, deep time wisdom of the oak tree, like beaming into your mind into the shower, like we all want it to be, if we were a Hollywood movie. But it was like, bro, there's a tick on your ass and
Exactly.
it's biting you right now. Get it off, and how actually that's like, I trust that so much more, you know? And and how, like, yeah, I love that, vision that, like, yeah, it doesn't the distance doesn't matter when the rope is strong enough, but of connection. It reminds me, I don't know if you've read this book, but I would suggest it to anyone who's listening, called To Speak for the Trees by Diana Beresford Kroger. So she's a biologist. She's an Irish biologist who lives and works in Canada, and she spent the summers in her youth in the Lachines Valley in Ireland, being raised by her extended family, who were all of these, like, elderly Irish folks. And this community really imparted her a lot of this wisdom and these practices. And in the book, she speaks about, there was this ash tree outside of her aunt's house in this valley, and it was one of the only big trees around. And they had this incredible relationship with this ash tree. And um, I won't butcher the Irish, but there's this word that was used to describe people who could hear the sonar of the ash tree in their heart, that has this particular sound quality, rhythmic quality. And there's a word for the people who can hear this thing. And and then so she, grew up with, like, okay, this ash tree and this sonar and all of this stuff, and having felt it as a child, but then later went on to be a part of the research that proved that actually large ash trees send off a sonar equivalent to the ones that underwater aquatic beings use to communicate with each other. And so, it just, this the same thing. It doesn't need to be proved by science, but sometimes it really kind of, wakes us up to, like, the things the old people tell us have a lot of weight and
Yes.
value. So I read this book, and at the time I was working with this ash tree in Redwood Regional Park in Oakland, and I was going there in my typical style every day, and I was. The goal originally was to find the rune language of the ash tree, sort of mimicking this Odin, the story of Odin hanging from the world tree and finding the runes in its roots. It's like, well, I'm not ready to hang from the tree at this time in my life, but I am ready to go to the same place every day and to read it for language.
Yeah.
Um, and during that time, I was mentoring this young man, and one day I took him to the tree after having gone there, and I would chant it, the Edda, every day, and I would bring it offerings and do all of these things. And it was this, like, how do we wake up the Megan in a tree, or is it waking up the power in me? Like, what's happening here? And so I brought him, after reading the book, I brought him to the tree, and we were just walking, and in, like, typical sly mentoring style, like stopped him, outside of the sort of range of of what I had felt from the tree. And it's like, okay, we're just gonna let's check in with our body. Let's do some body radar. What's our breathing like? What's our felt sense? What's going on in our heart center? All right, let's just walk a little bit further and get to this bridge and see if there's any shift in what happens. So we get to the bridge, and this, he's 12 or 13 at the time. He's more stoked to talk to me about video games and Dungeons and Dragons than nature.
Exactly.
And he's like, I don't know, I don't really feel anything. I'm like, okay, let's just close our eyes again and let's walk towards that tree. Let's just see what happens. Because, he's like, he's signed up for this. He knows I'm a weirdo at this point. We've been working together for a couple of years. And we walk towards the tree and we get to right under the canopy. And he's like, whoa. I'm like, what? He's like, whoa. I'm like, what's happening? He's like, oh, there's this warm, flapping in my heart right now. That's different than the beating of my heart. And it was this it was so incredible to try it out, to try it on, and then to watch it shift this young person. Because then I was able to tell him about the book and be like, I just read about this, and everything here's speaking to us. That tree just spoke to you. We can't deny that you just had that experience. And it opened up these incredible conversations about how trees speak and how, every single branch pattern is a sentence, because it's speaking about how nutrition and light and water have engaged with its body over its whole lifetime every time it grows a branch.
Yes.
And I think, I love that the way we got to talk about land spirits was the ancestors and the trees.
Yes.
That these are the types of beings that are speaking to us and informing our practice. And I'm sure there's a way in which that oak tree wrote that book with and for you,
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
1,000%. I mean, and I love this story that you're sharing about the young man you were mentoring, because now he has that experience that's a moment for him, a sense of confidence. And now he's out in the world to himself saying, I speak with trees, which then opens that more, right? How we open ourselves to these communications is the game. So we could shut it off if we want. We can be focused in on our screens or each other or our stresses or the chase for money or time or whatever. But all of these pathways of relationship and connection are just literally around us every second of every day at any moment that we decide we want to. And which is why, I've taught my kids, especially my daughter, when you're feeling like you have a hard time, just go for a walk. And just that, because that for me, that's the best thing. So she was doing that a lot lately because, 14-year-old girl, teenagehood, 8th grade, it's not the easiest time in life. And so she goes on these walks and she comes, the joy that comes in the room, comes back in the house when she comes back from the walk is palpable. She's like a different person, and it's not just because she got the endorphins going such, but it's, oh, the stars are so bright tonight, Dad. Or God, the sunset was amazing. And the colors on the clouds were the most beautiful color I've ever seen. And these are all those dialogues, all those connections. And this is just one step to active magic. When you build that relationship with that cloud or with those stars or with that tree, and you start to create a connection. Now, when you want to actively change the fate, you want to actively nudge the orlog in a direction or another, or weave something or unweave something in the past. Now you have these forces that you get to work together with. It's like, hey, maybe you can help me with this, or let's do this together, or let me take this thing and put it in that cloud because I have a path to the cloud now. I don't want this thing here anymore. I'm going to put it up there. Let it turn to rain, this sickness, this cold, whatever it might be. So these relationships, they build on each other and they become more and more empowering until we're so embodied and so entangled in the web of all of the forces of energy and life around us that now every mundane action becomes a magical action. And I think for me, this is where I am heading towards, where I want to be, which is I'm not like, let me now put down my mundane Erik, who's a dad and, runs a business and does these things. And now I'm going to pick up the magical Erik. I'm going to go do magic. Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you have to create the ceremony because you're going to do something so intense that you've got to clear all of the other things out so you can call the big forces in to do something. But when it's not like that kind of an action that needs to happen, then I'm making breakfast, I'm cleaning the house, I'm going on a date with my daughter, I'm having a meeting with my coworkers. And what are the experiences that we want to have in that? How can I make the food that I'm cooking for my kids be infused with healing, with vitality, with strength, with all these things that I hope that they can carry with them today, with clarity. And it changes day to day because life is dynamic, and so there isn't any day that's exactly the same. So the more that we're observant, the more that we're in a place of listening, then we adjust, just like we do in the mundane. It's like, oh, my kid is sick. Now my pattern of what I'm going to do today is different because the kid needs something different. So that means what I'm going to do is different, which is going to change the constellation of the entire day. Or they're healthy, so that's different. So there's the mundane way that we adjust to observation, and then there's the magical way that we adjust. Oh, they're sick. Let's infuse the medicine with a little extra oomph, Let me call to the oak tree who's so strong and has survived so many catastrophes, is still alive and thriving. Hey, oak, can I infuse a little bit of you into this medicine I'm going to give my kid so that they can survive and be strong? And so I'm just sort of bringing in that next layer, right? There's sort of the tending the relationship. There's that place of listening, observation, and then there's active participation, collective work and action to achieve a goal. But I think it's not quite as effective to jump into action without first having cultivated intended connection and relationship.
Yeah, and you can really hear your permaculture ethos coming out in that sense of like really spending that protracted and thoughtful observation before ever making uh believing that you have a solution for some issue, or some possibility on the landscape, and how um the I think in this time with this sort of like um blooming of magical uh knowledge and disinformation and culture and anti-culture that we're seeing all over the wonderful weird web space, that
passion and driven egos.
yes, exactly. That there's this like, uh okay, let's do action. Let's all do rituals. Let's all do these things. Let's all manifest this thing right now. That's powerful. Like people reclaiming their power to do these kinds of things. Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the like you're saying, that this building of relationship and the listening and then the the word that the collective cooperation with all beings that's possible gets lost when we all just day one go directly to action. And when we all just day one decide that, because I fall into this trap too, okay, sorcerer Chaise is here, and that means that dad Chaise and teacher Chaise and husband Chaise are AFK, and and it causes a lot of trouble. I don't know for you, but it causes a lot of trouble in my life. And just to hear and to be with you and to really reflect on the slowness and the care and the magical mundane, and that, yeah, there's certain actions to be taken, that you do need to put up those walls and throw on your cloak and go do your sorcerer thing, in the cave far away, because you don't want it in the house.
100%.
And then the other side of that is actually breakfast is just as important as
Yes.
as whatever thing you're doing in that cave, and doing them with equal magical skill.
Yeah, and if you think about what the ancestors, right? Like actually right here in my little den here, I've got pictures of troll cunning people all around here. Like, here's just like at the bookshelf, a bunch of troll cunning Nordic sorcerers from the past. And when you think about how the traditions operate, and what is it like when it's life or death, right? We are living in a wealthy Western culture. We live in an area of the world where there's a lot of resources. But the majority, if not all, magical traditions, not talking about high-level ceremonial ones or like high-level religious ceremony, but I mean the magic that comes from the ground, from the folk, from the peasant farmers, right? That is a magic, which is like trolldom, and what we're learning is born from that. And most folk practices come from the land. It comes from literally, are we going to survive the day? Is my kid going to make it to tomorrow, or through the winter, or through the end of the year? Are we going to have enough food not to starve this year, right? This is the roots, the foundation of folk magic comes from there. And so were people just always in big ceremony all the time? Like, who has time to be like doing big ceremony all the time? I mean, you have your knife that you use to feed yourself, and you use that for magic, right? Because this is one sacred tool that can do these things. You're going to go out and scythe the grain. Well, why not add a dedicated action to, as you scythe the grain, scythe away something that you don't need anymore, right? So how can we, the ladies, the women would come together to sew the clothes. We need these clothes. We're going to die in the cold winter without these clothes. Why don't we sew magical songs into these clothes while we, so part of the wisdom of this, and what I find is sometimes gets missed a lot with a lot of modern day folk practitioners, folk magic practitioners, is that this is about efficiency, about energy conservation, just like all beings in nature are about energy conservation. So the more that we understand the forces, whether they're gods or deities or spirits or energy or however we want to say it, elements of nature, all the same in this conversation, the more we understand how all these forces function and operate and connect to the living world, the less we need to do. because now it's about leverage points. It's about doing the smallest action to achieve the greatest outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That's day-to-day magic.
Mm-hmm.
Smallest action to achieve the greatest outcome. And of course, that has to be interwoven with the mundane, because it's a way of living in the world, right? And when we live and we talk about, let's not put animacy, like if I'm going to think about the world in the way of animism, it's not something, a mantle that I pick up when it's convenient. Now I'm going out into nature and no, 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 no. I mean, I'm going to drink this water right here. And it's like, this is alive right now. When I take this sip, I have an opportunity to infuse that water with something. We know that water carries intention. That's also been scientifically proven. So if I'm going to take a sip of water, why don't I speak something into that water before I drink it that will talk to all of my cells, because that water is now going to touch my cells. So embedding ourselves in the worldview of life,
Mm-hmm.
of relationship, gives us access to a lot more power than going out and having big rituals every single week to achieve things. Because now we're pulling forces into a thing and pushing it, rather than seeing that, oh, you know what, 90% of that's already happening. So
Mm-hmm.
let me just give it the little nudge to get that last 10%. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it comes down to sort of this ethos, I think, um, of dignity. Almost, that's the word that's coming to me. There's like, um, by noticing the 90% of the work that's already happening, and then just like applying a little bit of pressure to get that 10%, you're standing in this relationship of noticing the dignity of what's unfolding already. You
Yes.
know, what the spirits are doing, what the land is doing, what the gods and the energies and the elements are doing, noticing and reflecting on their dignity to do what they're already doing, and then just like being a collaborator in the process. Whereas instead of having this sense of like, um, what can happen in ceremonial magic, of like, yeah, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to rip these beings up from hell, whether or not they want to party with me. And then I'm going to send them out and to go change things, whether or not anything wants to be changed. Um, and everything must have happened in accordance with my will now, because that's what I do, because I'm a sorcerer, you know. Um, and there's time for that. There's time for that, like you said. But
I just wanted to say,
yeah.
I say there are moments for that. So for the folks listening, it's not like don't ever do that, because there are moments where the big thing has to happen and you need to clear the deck, invoke, and do the big shit.
Mm,
But those happen to be more rare than
mm,
what is trending on social media.
mhm. Yeah, exactly. And to like notice and listen, and to be, it all comes back again and again in this conversation. And just to wrap, to move into this wrapping phase, it's like it all comes back to relationality.
Mm,
Like, that big move is needed
mm.
because you've been paying attention, and because you've actually opened up your ears and listened, you
Mhm.
know and it's not um always auto generated.
Mm.
Like, I think this big move is needed. Sometimes it is like, you know random thought from out of nowhere, seemingly, that's like, this big thing is, you gotta drop everything now
Yeah,
and
and when
go
that
up.
random thought comes in, and it is a moment where the big magic is being called for, usually what's going to happen is there'll be a cascade effect. That thought comes in, I wonder if this needs to happen, and then all of a sudden you're like, the signs have been there all month long that this needs
Mhm,
to happen. In fact,
mhm,
I've been chewing on this all month, but I didn't realize that there was a moment where I need to take action in a big way now. And while we as really good traditional practitioners of magic will work with the moon and the elements and this and all the forces of nature. That is amazing, and I'm an avid follower of the moon and work with the phases of the moon and almost everything these days. When the really big things need to happen, sometimes it does like it's don't worry about planetary alignments. Don't worry about where the moon is. Don't because there's other things in alignment. What other people are doing, what the schedule, the way that's working, what's happening in the local environment. And sometimes those are the indicators are strong enough that like this is the moment to strike, like tomorrow, because this opportunity will be lost forever if I don't do it now.
Mm-hmm.
So while we can plan for big magic, and that's a beautiful thing, also sometimes it's like a drop everything and fucking go do it now sort of a thing. But like you were saying, but if you're not able to listen, you can't see the signs, you're not going to. You're not going to see it. You're not going to hear it. And sadly, how many sorcerers have terrible lives? Like a big percentage do. Well, a big percentage have amazing, wonderful lives too. But I think we have to look at how we care for our own thrivingness in relation to the work we do on behalf of others, and that the when you come from a place of thriving, that work we do out there in the world roots in better, roots in stronger and a bit more effective.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. The last thing I would ask you is if somebody, maybe they're making a transition from like a very ceremonial magic life into towards animacy, or maybe maybe they're an earth connected person who's never even thought about magic. Um, what what would be the like one step a person could take in your perspective, or the one step you would take um, to listen just a little bit better?
Ought to be just one kind of listening practice that you do during like every day if you can. For some people, meditation can work. That's not for everybody. For some folks, it might be like traditional yoga, where you're in a breathing space. For me, it's always walking. Always walking. It's always been walking. I need to walk a couple miles, not trying to do anything. It's not like I'm walking and then and Erik said, like if I walk every day, like I'm gonna start gaining magical power. You know what I mean? It's like no, it's like no thoughts, no thinking, just being, right? Just take the walk. Uh don't make a big fuss out of it. Don't make it like, am I doing it wrong? Am I doing no, 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 no. It's not about doing it wrong or anything. It's just about being in a space where you have a chance for your mind to calm a little bit. And for me, it's walking in awe. That personally, that's the most powerful way of learning how to listen and learning how to observe and generating relationship is walking in awe. But I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of different ways to get to this point, like meditation, breathing, yoga, tai chi. These are all different ways. But for me, it's walking in awe. And walking in awe isn't an exercise walk. It's not, let me try to get in as many steps as I possibly can and get to the end and back. No, it's a slow walk, one where you breathe, you smell the air, where you see what grasses are going to seed right now, or what plant is emerging out of the snow, or what trees are in bloom, or oh, what's that bird sound? I don't know what that is. Oh, that's cool. It's interesting. Looking at the shape of the clouds and just wow, it's beautiful. Like every little bit of this earth is absolutely beautiful, filled with miracle, filled with wonder. Even if you're in an urban environment and you just have a tiny little park to walk in, just walk or sit, sit spot, same exact thing, same exact practice. And I think then that's how you start. That's the one thing. Now, of course, from there, we build it into how we be in relationship with others, creating space for people to talk and listening to body language and tone and all these things. But that's more advanced. That'll be for another conversation. But just pick up some kind of awareness practice of any kind and spend 20-25 minutes a day if you can. Stack it in somehow. It's like, rather than drive down to the store, oh, it's a 20-minute walk, I'll walk to the store and back, or it's 10-minute walk, I'll just walk there. So you can add a mundane action, which makes you feel, because in this day and age, productivity is the greatest of all gods, in this area. So in this, Western world, so you can make it feel like you're being productive. I'm going to do a thing that's productive and then come back. But the space in between you doing that thing, you're doing the real magic, which is the dropping into awareness and being in a space of listening and allow what wants to emerge. And then you can carry that on into your life.
Perfect. Beautiful. Out there, walk the land. This practice of really taking that on. Like, what does it mean to just drop in? And that's something you can do. Some of my best sit spots have been in downtown Oakland, and that it doesn't matter where you are, that you can turn on this awareness. So thank you. That's a great practice. If people want to check out your book or check out what you're doing locally in all of your many hats, where should I point them towards?
Yeah, the book is The Regenerative Landscaper. It's a 500-page book on regenerative design, planning, installation, and a lot of what we're talking, there's an entire chapter dedicated to how to listen. Of course, that's within the context of land active design and regeneration. But while I kept the book kind of more sciencey, if those who know the way signs will find all the magic in there. But just to my website, erikohlsen.com, erikohlsen.com. And we have a group that meets here in West Sonoma County once a month. We gather around the fire and do magic together, or learn together about different forms of traditional magic, or do different practices together. And that's a wide open community. So if folks want to join us, that would be beautiful. And otherwise, check out my website, and we can connect.
Awesome. Thanks. And I'm sure some people are going to be seeking you out, and just so thankful for your time. I don't take it for granted. It's been very meaningful.
Me neither. And thank you for hosting me and having me and setting this up. And it's been such a pleasure to be here with all of you who are listening in. And I hope you will reach out, and I hope we can build beautiful relationships together in both the seen and unseen worlds.